When it comes to our familiarity with tradition, with revitalising the back catalogue, when you think of some of the more glamorous reissues that really hit the collector button for those of us, I think, especially with Y chromosomes, you look at this luxury packaging. Are you trying to recapture that kind of feel, but online? Because I think of some of the Columbia reissues of Miles Davis's back catalogue. There's some beautiful boxes with sort of metal sides, loads of extra notes, extra session tracks, all of this kind of thing. Lovely product to touch and feel and own and put on a shelf. And trying to do that in the digital domain is difficult, time-consuming, and very expensive to do exactly what you were just describing.
Well, I grew up kind of, to understand my background, my adopted grandfather was a bass player by the name of Milt Hinton, who started playing in the 1930s with Cab Calloway's band. So I actually knew Miles Davis. I actually knew Dizzy Gillespie. I knew a lot of those things. And I think that what they did in the 70s and 80s, because of the lack of content, was they tried to make the music more academic. They tried, by giving you these liner notes, they wanted people to learn more about, to understand the depth of it. And a lot of these cats were just characters in and of themselves. And I don't think it's so much, I don't think it's so important that you necessarily have to dictate the circumstances, because I think that the music speaks for itself. Any good music speaks for itself. It moves you in a certain way, and that way isn't necessarily always articulatable. You can't always articulate that. And what I try to do is not so much get into depth of that, but capture the spirit, to let you know more about the personalities of the artist. Like, there's great stories about Miles Davis. Like, I honestly think I'm probably the only person that Miles Davis never cussed out, because he had such a respect for my grandmother that he just didn't do that type of stuff around her. So I think what I try to do is not so much, give the liner notes and have somebody talk about the session and all this other innate stuff, but I try to present stories of the personalities and the people, and give people more of a connection with somebody that they would never know.
Jonathan, how much is this kind of added content, this kind of extra context, vital as far as you're concerned when it comes to selling the back catalogue digitally?
I think you completely need this kind of context, and I just want to pick up on what Jerald was saying with regard to classical music. I think that we've had so much that's been off-putting about classical music to people that is focused on trying to explain what the music is. I think that's definitely true in terms of liner notes in the past and the way packaging's been done. And if you look at The Rest Is Noise, which is this great book by Alex Ross that everybody loves to talk about, but I think there's a reason everybody loves to talk about it, because it took a different approach to popularizing classical music, or making it accessible, particularly 20th century classical music, which is the most difficult, and talked about the historical context, the personalities, the way these musicians thought, the way they interacted with each other, the way they influenced each other. That's a human story. And I think that's something which transcends whether you're a generalist and not really that interested in music, or classical music, or in jazz music for that matter, or whether you're a real aficionado. This is news to you. This is interesting.
One of these things it was interesting, because I had a brief conversation with Lang Lang last night. He did an iTunes LP. And one of the things is that I think it's really important to understand that when you have this type of back catalog, in a lot of instances you have stuff that's available on LP, you have stuff that was available on cassettes, you have stuff that was available on CDs and extended CDs, then digital downloads, and the whole question is, well, how do I get somebody to buy something that they may have already bought in another realm? That they may already, why should they pay, 9 or 10 or 15 bucks for something that they can get on Amazon used for 89 cents and pay $3.47 a ship? So creating this new type of content, creating these things, they all go into a process of engaging a new audience, and not only a new audience, but the same audience again by telling a story that's more complete. When you have some of this stuff that's like 18th and 19th century music, and it's been recorded, 9,476 times, all around the world, then you have to find a way to listen and make your story more interesting. And your story may be having an interview from somebody who's a doctor in the music, who understands the nuances of Debussy or his life. And that stuff allows you to connect with people. I was just talking to somebody who owned a classical label last night, who was doing, I think they were doing Rachmaninoff. And I said, well, have you ever seen if you could find any programs from that original concert? and digitize them and add them as a special PDF bonus feature. And this is the type of stuff that people don't necessarily do. They don't think outside the box like that to figure out what's available.